Hey campers, it's Pastor Derek here, and welcome to this year's version of Out and About with me, Pastor Derek. I hope you've had fun all week with Panda, granola, and buckets as you've been learning about what? What is that? That's right, you've been learning all about the miracles of Jesus. And our theme for this week has been adventure. And we've been exploring what it would be like even have adventure in your own backyard. And this Out and About is pretty cool because this was my backyard. This right here is the farm that I grew up on. This is where I was raised. This is the backyard that I learned how to have adventure, how to use my imagination. This is where I learned to explore. So let me show you around the farm a little bit. All right, campers, we have to be very, very quiet because the chickens are all in their roosts where they're gonna sleep for the night. We don't wanna disturb them too much. You see, when I was a kid, I used to come in here and help my grandma pick the eggs right out of these bins right here. And we would pick the eggs and bring them home and clean them up. And I learned all about how amazing it is that these chickens were able to produce these eggs like this big out of a tiny little chicken. And then how those eggs tasted so good. We could use them in our cookies, we could have fried eggs for breakfast, and in many other things as well. And it just got me imagining how awesome our God is that he could create something like a chicken that could not only be a pretty cool animal, but also produce something that is so good for us and gives us so much nourishment, and just the imagination behind that. So campers, does anyone know what this is behind me? This is a tractor. And what are tractors used for? See, tractors are used to go in the field. And right from the time that I was a little boy, I would imagine myself driving this tractor. And when I turned older eventually, I was actually able to drive them. You know, there's so many things that we imagine we could do. We always want to do things that older people get to do, like grown-ups get to do, that our parents get to do. But did you know that in God's timing, that we are able to grow up and do some of those things? And you know that God's timing is always perfect. And sometimes we may question God's timing. We may say, why is this not happening right away? And in our story today, the disciples were questioning God's timing. Because you see, Jesus, who they've been following and who you've been learning about all week long, died on a Roman cross. And the disciples were wondering, how could God let this happen? And they buried him in the tomb, and he stayed there. How could God let this happen? Why would God let his son die on the cross? But you see, God's timing is always perfect. You see, campers, I was raised on a milking cow farm, and these here are some of the baby calves. And these calves are gonna grow right up and become big cows that are gonna give milk. But right now, they are still young and they still have lots of growing to do. And you see, the disciples, while they were following Jesus, and while they were learning his ways and practicing in his ways, they still had a lot of growing to do. And in fact, we always have growing to do. We'll never learn the whole picture. And the disciples, even though they lived with Jesus his whole life and they saw all the miracles that he did, like some of the miracles you've been learning about all week long, they still question what was going on here. And many of them actually wondered if Jesus would really raise from the dead, even though Jesus told them he would. But it just wasn't happening. So what was going on? So campers, here I am with many more cows. Many more cows. These cows are getting older and they're going to be giving milk very soon. But as we continue in our story, like we said, the disciples, they were still wondering what was going on. But did you know, not after one, not after two, but after 3 days, just like Jesus said he would, he rose from the dead. He left the grave. It was the biggest miracle this world has ever seen. The Son of God came down in the form of a baby, grew up, showed us the way, and then died. But after 3 days, he beat the thing that no human can beat. That's death. And he raised up from the dead. And there was people that went to the tomb. So let's look at our story there. So in our story, the story of the resurrection, there are three women, all right? Three women: Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary, the mother of James. And these women go to the tomb. That's the grave where Jesus was buried. And they go there to honor Jesus, to prepare for Jesus's body. Similar to what we would do when we maybe would visit a gravesite, right? Have you ever done that? Maybe you bring flowers to honor the grave and to go remember the person. So they go to the grave and they go there and it's empty. There's no one there. So in our story in Luke 24, these three women go and the grave is totally empty and no one's there. And they go, what happened? And all of a sudden this angel appears and says to them, women, who are you looking for? They say, we're looking for Jesus. And the person that is the angel that is in the grave, the angel from heaven in the grave says, Jesus is not here. He is risen. And the women go and they run and they go and tell everyone that Jesus is no longer there. This is bigger than they ever could have imagined. This is bigger than they ever could have dreamed. This is a bigger adventure than they ever could have imagined they would be on, that they would get to experience Jesus rising from the grave. So friends, maybe you are raised on a farm like me. Maybe you're raised in an apartment. Maybe you're raised in the backyard. You see, friends, we can use our imagination no matter where we are. And did you know that any of us can imagine what God can do? But with that, God can do things more than we can ever even dream or imagine. We serve a good God who cares for you and loves you so very much. Friends, we're going to do one more Out and About with Pastor Derek this summer. But if you don't see me again, goodbye for now, and we'll see you soon.